very good. Well, we're here with next guest. I might let you introduce him, brother.
This is Ryan Chatfield. I want to say so many different things because I've known this gentleman for quite some time, but I'm going to let him give his spill of why he's here and what you sort of do with yourself nowadays.
Thanks, yeah, thanks for having me. So I am a fully untrained filmmaker and photographer. I never went to school or university to learn anything about media, but I've managed to forge a career, I guess, in that. But it started, I'm actually from Mandurah, from this area. I went to high school just over the corner there. It's the first time I've seen that high school for a very long time.
Bringing back some memories.
Flooded back some memories.
Nice to see some locals achieving big things.
Yeah, it was cool to come back, and I finished high school there and did pretty well. I was going to go to university, and then my cousin managed to win a 5-year lease on the dive shop that used to be on Rottnest Island.
Right.
And he rang me up and he's like, "Do you want to come and wash pissy wetsuits for your summer break?" And I was like, "That sounds like a good idea. Yeah. Maybe I should do that." So I went over there and I didn't come home. I stayed there and lived on Rottnest for about 4.5 years. Got into snorkeling and free diving, and then became a scuba instructor and lived a life of ocean-based adventures, which was really, really cool. And then from there, and that's where I sort of picked up photography. My cousin Neil, he used to have an old film camera that used to kick around the office, and I used to steal it all the time and go and take photos of waves and sunsets and things like that. So that's where my passion for photography started. And then another mate of mine who was an instructor, he came and he said, "Look," he goes, "like, man, you got to come and do this thing called a commercial diving course." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sounds cool." And so I borrowed 30 grand and went and did this 3-month course, and it's a totally different world. You go from holding hands with beautiful foreigners, showing them coral, to working in mud, with chainsaws and shackles and slings. So
which one do you prefer?
Yeah, it's probably the recreational one now in hindsight, but it was cool. It was a really an amazing career to have, and I made a lot of mates that I'm still really good mates with, because you spend a lot of time underwater and sometimes in pretty dangerous conditions. So there's a lot of trust built up between you and your crew to make sure that you sort of do it safe. And I'd always just continued on with the photography as a hobby, and then those DSLRs come out which could shoot photos and video, and it was really nice quality as well. So I picked up one of those and flicked off photo mode and went into video mode, and then that sort of passion for film came from there, and just like everybody else, started making skating vids and surfing vids and stupid prank vids and things like that, and fast forward to now, and we've got a documentary series on Disney Plus. So it's been a ride.
How did you get? So ShipWreck Hunters Australia is the show that's on the Disney Channel. You've done season 1.
Yep.
How did it go from recording videos and stuff like you said you were doing into that?
Well, it was that combination really of diving and that love for film and photography. When we used to dive, we would do 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off. So you had a lot of time when you got back. And luckily I met two of my best mates now that were into the same sort of thing. So we would all dive, away for a month, and then we'd come home, and they had a passion for film and photography as well. So we'd just go on these adventures, or often they would go on some adventures and then bring home the footage, and I'd cut it for them and do these edits. So there was that sort of, that little thing. And then that turned into this, we called ourselves Terra Australis, and it was a production company based on ocean sort of adventures. Oh. And we had a few viral hits with just content. It was the early days of that sort of YouTube channels and Instagram and stuff like that. And there was a few things that got some notoriety with the news and sort of went viral around the world. And that's really where it started to gain traction. Yep. And if you watch the series, you'll see that the linchpin for us was Johnny and mates of his finding an undiscovered shipwreck, which is incredibly rare nowadays.
I was going to say, like, where do you get your tip-offs or your leads and stuff to find shipwrecks? Because it's along the West Australian coast, which isn't like a major shipping channel that I was aware of.
I was about to say, if you watch the show, you'd probably find out a little bit about
yeah. I won't give too much away, but but we've got an incredibly deep maritime history in Western Australia because all of that in the early years of trade, they're all going up to Batavia, which is now Indonesia. Right. So they're coming from around the bottom of Cape Horn in South Africa, from Europe and stuff, and they would sail across and then go straight up to Indo, because that's where all the trade was. And often they would get curious, or they didn't have any proper navigation there, so they would hit the WA shoreline, whether it was the Abrolhos Islands or Coral Bay or Exmouth. It's pretty treacherous there if you think about how difficult it would be to navigate those atolls and reefs. And the truth is that a lot of them were curious about what that land was, and they could sort of got sucked in there. Some was like piss poor navigation, some of the captains were drunk, some, there's all these excuses. But there's over 1,600 shipwrecks along the WA coast, with only less than a third of them being found, so there's still a lot of rich history there.
Awesome.
So how does that go if you found like Blackbeard's treasure down there? Do you get like finder's rights or something like that if you find like a massive chest full of gold?
Not really. No. It's really, really restrictive and controlled nowadays, and everyone's out there for the treasure. That's the appeal for shipwrecks.
100%.
Everyone just...
I've heard sometimes governments make claims on it when it's brought up by
That's right.
guys like yourself and stuff.
Yeah, so things of value and wealth are definitely quickly claimed by the government, and that's worldwide.
Yeah.
Australia has very strict maritime laws. You're not even allowed to bring anything to the surface. You're not allowed to disturb the seabed. They call it they just leave it in situ basically. Yeah. And if it's not of like something that's really significant enough to be able to identify a ship, or they were missing some certain piece, they'll just leave it on the bottom. So even if there's wreck sites that we dive where there's maybe 10, 12, 13 cannons still encrusted on the sea floor, but they don't need to bring them in because they've already identified the ship. They've already got one of the cannons in the museum, so there's no need. Everyone's after the treasure, but to be honest, there's not a lot of that treasure left. There is still silver on the ground along the WA coast for sure, but it's highly regulated. If you get caught with it, you're in big trouble, and so it's it kind of stifles it, and it's fair enough. It's part of maritime history. Why should one person have that in their bedroom when you can't, and no one else be able to share it?
In sort of like a sailor's grave mentality. These people have perished, and you're kind of trying to profit out of their...
That's right, yeah.
Almost like grave robbing or something like
exactly.
that. Yeah, right.
And it's something you need to realise that most of the shipwreck stories are that. They're grave sites. Hundreds of people, multiple people died in that same spot. So even though it's exciting and beautiful, you need to be conscious of that as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of treasure, the way we see it now through the series is that the content that we get is the treasure. The marine ecosystems that develop around shipwrecks is amazing. You really get big aggregations of sea life and fish there because of structure. So that is a treasure in itself.
100%.
And then throughout the series, we found that the survival stories were the real... the most amazing components of these shipwreck stories. There's not a lot of the wrecks left, they're 400 years old. It's not as though you're swimming through this huge wreck. It's all broken up bits of timber and steel. Yeah. But some of those survival stories, what those guys went through was hectic. You know how hard it is, the Australian coastline. So imagine it 300 years ago. There's no food, there's no water, there's no shelter. Everything's spiky, wants to bite and kill you, and almost all of the survivors that have survived and have been able to tell that story, it's because the traditional owners helped them, and it was only through that assistance that they managed to survive and get back to their homeland. Wow. For those that didn't have that assistance, they just perished on the beach pretty much. So,
of course.
So that was really interesting to see that I didn't really know much about
side
that.
of the history. Yeah, you don't really expect that. And the survival, it's not like they could just set off a GPS location, come find me and stuff.
Yeah.
They really were just stuck doing what they could with the land and getting assistance from the traditional owners. That's interesting side of it you don't really think about.
No, and you think about, like, we try and put ourselves in their shoes, and these guys have just sailed halfway around the world. They've just been through a cyclone. They're probably malnourished, scurvy, dehydrated. Then they have to swim 4Ks or float 4Ks to the shore. Yeah. Then they hit the shore and they're like, oh yeah, we survived the shipwreck. And then they look and they're like, fuck, we are in
the fry pan into the fire sort of
and
thing.
Some of them didn't even know how to swim.
No, they can't even swim.
Sailors can't swim,
wow.
right?
Yeah. And then you look at their age group as well. Like the captain was 26, right? And there's 25 men, and the youngest is like the cabin boy at age 10. So it's not as though, their life expectancy was like 40 years of age. So
you got 4 decades. You had a good run.
Yeah, that's it. You have had a good run.
26 at the ripe old mature age.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'd be responsible enough to captain a ship at 26. I was running muck.
They were much harder men then than we are now. That's for sure. Everyone would be too
definitely
worried about whether they're getting their sleep or not.
I am going to rewind it back a little bit here and talk about, you said uneducated. So what would you say to someone that is thinking about jumping into this sort of career path of any sort of editing or filming? Are they thinking that they have to go to university or get a formal education? Does anybody go, I want to see that certificate before I employ you?
Absolutely not. And times have changed in a massive way. And we all know the University of YouTube is king at the moment. 100%. So that's the way I learned, was just through trial and error, through peers, through, before YouTube was as big as it was, you used to be able to buy online courses and things like that. So I just did that. But with digital content, you can shoot all day, every day, and if it's all shit, it doesn't matter. Just delete it and you go again tomorrow. So it's one of those things that you're continually learning. I'm still learning new editing techniques, new ways to colour. The cameras are getting better and better. The specs are getting better. The ability for slow motion, now there's. Drones are epic. The aerial component, we're shooting underwater. It just never stops. So it's really quite an ever-evolving landscape, which is really fun and challenging. And for someone that wants to get into it, and it sounds so cliche, but you just go for it. If it's your passion, go for it. You can do whatever you want, but if it's a half-assed effort because you want to be seen as a photographer, then whatever.
If you're serious about it, go for it. I imagine shipwreck hunting could be pretty expensive as well, the expeditions and stuff you go on, a lot of equipment and a lot of stuff involved in it. Is it hard to gain support to do that sort of thing? So with the Disney series, obviously you get funding from various funding partners. We were really lucky to be supported by Screen Australia and Screen West, obviously Disney as well. We were the first ever commissioned documentary series in Disney history, which was a real feather in the cap.
Definitely, Put that one on the resume.
And from all accounts, it did really well. They told us it exceeded expectations internationally and domestically, which is really cool. It's expensive, but it's tricky because marine operations, like you said, are inherently expensive. When you talk about large vessels doing long distances for extended periods of time, and then all the equipment that's associated with searching, it's very expensive. And we didn't have a massive budget when you think in terms of it. So what they do is they give you the amount of money and they go, right, this is it. You've got to work to that budget. And so you really learn how to make every dollar count. But we're lucky enough to have a broad network of friends and industry partners and associates that help us along as well. Cool. And a lot of people doing us a lot of favours, which is really cool to see, because it's a good
thing to be a part of as well.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Everyone loves
showcasing the West Australian coast, the history of it and stuff like that. So I could imagine there'd be a lot of people in the industry that would be happy to lend a hand.
Yeah, and it's also that chase for treasure. Everyone's shipwreck, let's go. There's something about it.
Everybody loves pirates and stuff like that.
I think they're actually going to get the treasure.
But I was going to interject. There was there's a couple of points I'm going to make. So there was when watching this series. I'm probably going to reveal something here, but you've had your opportunity. You've had your opportunity.
That's all right.
You didn't always find something, right? So how did they sort of go when you put the footage back to them and it wasn't actually always like bang, 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 win, win, win?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What are they sort of like, mate?
No, well, you're right, and that's what like managing expectation is tricky because you call yourself the Shipwreck Hunters and you don't find a shipwreck every episode. The truth of it is it's very hard to do. Like it's only one every 100 years or something.
Yeah.
I imagine that would just be the reality.
That's
of
the reality.
Shipwreck hunting
Yeah.
is you're going to get leads sometimes that don't pay off.
Oh, 100%. And the thing is, when you actually go searching for something, you're often piecing together little bits of information from 100 years ago from some bloke with one eye that was standing on a thing in a stormy night that saw something. You know what I mean? It's not GPS marks generally. So you start what we call mowing the lawn. So you drag a side scanner or a magnetometer behind the boat and you have to cut these laps. And then you realise how big the ocean is, mate, because it is incredibly time consuming. And then with the side scanners, they put down like a beam onto the seafloor looking for anomalies, and you have to have an overlap. So you do 100 metres, and then your next one might be 50 metres, to the right. But you've got to have that overlap because you could miss it. You could go past and you've just missed it. So there's that. Technology is getting a lot better, and I think more and more stuff will be found. But shipwreck hunting is a very tough game.
Yeah.
And in the series, we were looking at, some of the wreck sites were already known sites, but there was bits and pieces that they needed, more clues. Could we find evidence of the cargo and things like that? So it was about those little wins that we would have if we could find something that confirmed an identity of something. That was how we got around it.
Yeah. And then I guess like the next thing I was going to make a point of is like in these sort of reality TV shows. Sorry, I'm competing with the rain here.
Hasn't it? That's why we're inside and not in an actual garden by this time.
Yeah. False advertising. Sort of like when you see a reality TV show, they always sort of paint people as these different characters. You've got the good guys and you've got the villains. There's always that in a TV show. So was there sort of a thing where you had to have like a TV character of yourself? Like, I'm saying it's still you, but like you're projecting, I don't know, the funny guy or whatever, or the...
Yeah. They kind of do, everyone's sort of got their role, I guess, in the show, and it's important to... because it's a documentary, it's not a TV show or a film. It's observational. You're documenting what's going on. Like, so you're not really playing a character as such. We couldn't swear as much. We had to be, you had to be conscious of
try and edit it a little bit.
Yeah, the way
self-editing.
I was about to say, did you ever have a moment where you're like, oh fuck, that was amazing, and you're like, shit, I have to shoot that.
We're going to redo that again. and there was some stuff like that they had to cut out because of just. When you're out on a boat for 10 days with your mates, you kind of get relaxed a little bit, even though the film... And all the film crew become your mates as well, so it's awesome fun. Like, we have the best time. We're in some of the best locations in WA, doing what we love. Like, it doesn't feel like work.
I was actually going to ask, talking about having the crew and stuff, and you would be out at sea for extended lengths of time, but you've got obviously the dive crew and the production crew as well. Does it ever get a bit claustrophobic on the boats?
You get used to like sharing bunks pretty close with each other, but we as a dive team that have worked together for so long, and we're all best mates, and I can't remember any Barneys that we've ever had. Everyone just sort of gets on. And then the production crew, we're lucky that they're all legends as well. You hand pick them, like, you don't suffer. You're not going to choose some bloke that's going to be a dickhead. So it's
there's a lot of money and also a lot of danger involved in some of the stuff that's being done. So.
And you've got to live with them, so no one wants to be that guy. So we're super lucky to have an incredible DOP and our second cameraman and our soundy and all those guys we've worked with on different projects as well. So it's just like get all the band back together, So it's always really good. There is a few tense moments when there's, you're out, you're up against the weather, you haven't got the shot, like we haven't got this part yet, and you can't get it, or you haven't seen something that you're supposed to see. So there's always that tension around getting it, but when you do nail it, or you're on the back of the boat and you're reviewing this amazing shot of something, you're like, that's going to be gold.
Yeah, right. That's what you do it for.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
And how long would so we see the episodes, I think, what are they,
40 minutes, yeah.
So how much of that 40 minute, or how long did that 40 minutes take to film?
That's 10 days, 12, 14 hours a day, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like there could be a whole series of B-roll. I'll just what
so
didn't
much.
make it?
So much, yeah. And then you think about I always feel sorry for the data wrangler, because there's 3 underwater cameras, 2 topside cameras, 4 GoPros, 4 drones, every day. All super high res, so that guy's got some jobs, and if he formats the wrong card or something like that, it's sucking all over.
Yeah, right, because you just want to catch as much as you can.
Yeah,
any of the action,
and everyone's a filmmaker, so myself, I'll shoot underwater, then I'll put the drone up, and then I'll take still photos, and then I'll shoot some stuff on the top side, so just me, and then the other guys are all the same as well, so. And you can't help it when you're in this spot and you see something amazing, and a great sunset or surf's pumping or whatever it is. Everyone's like, drones up, and there's 4 drones in there shooting the same thing. But no one wants to miss out, because we all love that part of it.
Yeah. I was going to say that you did say something about surf. There was a guy that, where did he live? And he had his own private break. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. In the Australis there,
yeah. Dude. He's got a sick little reef break that he surfs.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's funny we take WA for granted because we live here and we go to these places all the time, but that's what translated the best. The feedback we got from Disney was that people were just blown away by the WA coastline. It's just you think about an American audience, they didn't even know where WA was. And the underwater scenery and the underwater life was the strongest pillar of our series, which is cool. And hopefully if we go around season 2, then that'll be a focus again. But when you think about the breadth of WA, if you go from what Esperance looks like all the way up to what the Kimberley or Broome that looks like, and you've got everything, the whole Coral Coast in between. It's so diverse and so stunning.
A lot of people know the Great Barrier Reef over near Queensland and stuff, but there's not much often showcased about WA.
No.
So really putting us on the map. So
it really is, Yeah, it's cool. So the Australis Islands is just so unique in itself. It's this huge archipelago of coral atolls. There's not even sand over there. You're walking, the islands are made up of coral. It's only, I don't know, probably a metre above sea level everywhere you go. It's super low lying. Some of the most pristine marine ecosystem in the world. It's so beautiful, but it's so subject to weather and wind. It's so windy.
You guys did have to sort of sit back a couple of days.
Yeah, some huge storms roll through, and that's what makes it good, I think. When you score it, you know you're lucky, because it's not always like that. It's some hard yards out there.
What did you guys do with the downtime then?
Just played and drank coffees and ate Tim Tams.
We just obviously you had to postpone it because of safety, because of storm rolled through and stuff. Do you ever get the ocean's a hostile environment? And do you ever have to bail because of sharks and stuff like that, or?
Not really. We everything we do is a calculated risk. Anytime you get in the water, it's risky, right? So, and we put ourselves in some pretty precarious positions, but it's not flippant. We've trained a lot. We're certified to do deep diving. We've got a lot of time in the water, so you feel confident going in there. But no one wants to get hurt or die either. So we're not as if there's some large carnivorous fish that's looking a bit aggressive, we're not staying in there to be cool. We'll get the hell out so that we're okay. But we haven't been chased out of the water by anything. But in one of the episodes, we were out there at Australis and we are diving in breaking waves over razor sharp shallow reef, and I remember it's probably one of the best moments of my life. I think about it. This huge set was coming in, and I had my camera, that's got this big glass dome on it, so you can't get a single scratch on that. Wow. And this set was coming. I was like, oh man, what am I going to do here? So I've had to dive down, and then you dive down, it's crystal clear, and then there's these 300-year-old cannons on the seafloor just spread out everywhere, and in order for me not to get ragdolled, I just had to hang on to this cannon. Wow. So I'm hanging onto a cannon. This two-wave set is going over the top and it's just exploding, like white water everywhere. And I was like, fuck, this is so cool, man.
So close to death, but so alive.
It was amazing. So things like that stick with you forever, you know. And then your mate's doing the same thing like 20 metres down there, and you're like looking at each other just screaming because it's so good, So that was really cool, and it's just, you know what it's like when you get in the ocean. Stuff happens, like you have these unique experiences that you just, if you're not in there, you're never going to have it, right? So, and it's unexpected. Sometimes when you go hunting, looking for something, like if we want to film sharks or whatever, there's no bloody sharks, you know, when you're chasing it. But when you're just cruising around and not expecting stuff, that's when the gold really starts to happen.
I was about to say, how deep have you had to go then?
Well, if you think about shipwrecks, they smash on shallow reef. They're not really sinking deep water unless it's in a storm or something. But most of the time, it's in relatively shallow water.
Are you talking the depth of this room or shallow?
Yeah, it can be anything. Yeah. Like the one that Johnny found was in 38 metres of water. So that got rolled over in a cyclone. Had copper ore as what it was carrying, and it was loose in the hold of the ship, so it started to sway, and then the load shifted, so all the weight went to one side and it just flips the boat over, right? Yeah. And that's a wicked story, and there's one survivor, and the reason he survived, he was right at the top of the mast at the time trying to unfurl the sails. Wow. And because it flipped and he was up there, it flicked him out, and everyone else got caught in the rigging and went down with the ship, and this guy survived. Wow. And then sort of drifted into an island, was attacked by a shark on the way, fought off a shark, made it onto this little rocky island and survived for 3 or 4 days there in extreme heat and extreme exposure. Wow. And to a point where he had to sort of bury himself in the sand or in shallow water and just leave his face out so he could breathe, because he was just getting cooked from the sun and stuff. So crazy stories like that, you know. But to get back to it, we can be anywhere from 2 metres to 40 metres, you know, and everywhere in between. Just depends on the location, the wreck site, how far the wreckage is broken up, because often it's not clumped up.
Because the swells are pushed.
Swells are pushed in, but also when they used to wreck, they used to try and bail all the heavy stuff off. So they would throw the cannons off and they'd throw the anchors off, but they'd eventually be bouncing down the reef. Yep. So you get this, what they call a wreck plume, the trail of artefacts that cruise down the reef. So, it's pretty interesting.
And do you get any sort of new age wrecks, or is it all like sort of just stuff that's like 100 years plus?
No, there's a lot of what they call modern day wrecks. Yeah. We don't really feature them in the show as much because they don't have the history, or it's usually everyone survived and there's no story there.
That's too nice of a story.
Everyone survived. Boring.
So we're just sort of looking at those sort of more historical wrecks because there's more depth to it in storytelling and more chances of, you know, crazy survival stories or ancestral stories and stuff to tell. So that's what we're looking at. But nowadays, if a fishing boat goes down, most of the time they want to recover it and get it out, salvage it, so it doesn't affect the marine environment, you know, because they're holding so much diesel and whatever else. So they very rarely will just leave something on the seafloor. But then they do scuttle stuff on purpose for dive sites as well. So, you know, big
old decommissioned,
decommissioned and warships and things like that. They often do as well. So. So there's a lot to dive on, but like I said, they become this amazing marine hotspot, and over time you get these huge congregations of fish from the small macro stuff to the huge stuff as well, which is really cool.
Is it hard to get into the actual shipwreck hunting side of it? If people sort of have that treasure hunting bug and stuff?
Not really. If you've got the money and the time, you can go for it, you know?
If you've got the money and the time.
There's 3 things you need: money, time and weather, because like I said, it's usually in the most treacherous location. You can only get on it once, twice, 3 times a year, and sometimes it's just too hard basket. But there's definitely crew that get that fever, and after we did Series 1, the amount of people that come out of the woodwork and were like, oh, my Uncle Joe, he saw this thing once. And
coming from everywhere.
yeah, and then they're sending in photos of bits of brass and all this sort of stuff. And some of it was like really good leads, and some of it was bullshit. But
of course, right?
Yeah,
Is there any like sort of unicorns in the ship hunting world that are sort of like there's a name of a ship out there that you'd love to dive and find?
If you watch the show. There's actually there's one in the
it's up off Port Hedland, like it's called the Kumbana, and it was the Titanic of WA basically.
Oh, right.
It was the ship that basically kept Western Australia's remote communities alive. It used to bring the fresh produce and the mail and transport people before there was roads from sort of town to town. This huge thing, massive, and it was like when it came to town, that was the cool thing because it was pretty fancy.
Yep.
Had saloons and it was kind of luxurious and stuff, and so everyone would get pumped for it to come to town, and it's disappeared off the face of the earth. Not a single trace, not a single eyewitness.
Not a solid lead on it
Nothing.
at all.
Nothing.
Wow.
And
so you must just have a rough gauge of like where it last left.
Yeah,
at least,
yeah, we know where it
going.
left. They went out to sea into a cyclone to try and like, sort of head on, and it just disappeared. And there wasn't. Usually there's wreckage, right? And I think they found a pillow and a door of this gigantic ship, which just blows our mind because there'd be so much stuff that would float. And they couldn't find anything.
The Kraken take.
Yeah, something's got it. It's deep. It's super deep.
Yeah. So, what's the plan for the future? Obviously, a season 2 would be lovely. But what about international? So, ShipWreck Hunters internationally, because like a wreckage like that could have washed up, I don't know, Indonesia or something.
Anywhere, and that is the dream. Like if we can get multiple series up where we could take it internationally, because there's so much. If you think about Indonesia and Papua New Guinea and all those places where it's crystal clear, warm water, there's so much war history all through that area where there's really sick, undiscovered stuff. And there's still places in the world where you can bring treasure up. If you find it, you got it, Really? So, some places have got a bit more of a laxed attitude towards it.
Wouldn't they be pretty much sort of like, if they've got such a lax attitude to it, everyone's going to swarm to it, right?
Yeah, well, it's like...
It'll still come down to, like you said, time and money.
Yeah, you got to find it, A couple of coins for you, a couple of coins for me, everyone shares. It's getting tighter and tighter, but...
Fair enough.
Yeah. But you wouldn't want to, you want the thrill of the chase, and if you find the treasure, it's sweet, but it deserves to be in the rightful hands of whoever has it, It's no good, like I said, having this amazing stuff but having to keep it under your bed.
Yeah.
What's the point?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
the rain's really picking up, so I might wrap this up. But just quickly before we go, are you still making so you said it started with originally just putting up some videos that went viral. Are you still doing that? Can people still follow that sort of thing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we've got all our social channels, Terra Australis on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. We still do a lot of that stuff. It's more sort of high end now, like sort of cinematic documentation. It looks really nice now. And it's basically just ocean-based adventures. So whenever we go to Exmouth or Coral Bay and whatever we dive with, we throw up. We did some live streaming of the Ningaloo, which was really cool. So we hooked up our cameras to Starlink and we live streamed the whole thing, and we jumped in on a whale carcass and we had someone narrating over the top, and people could ask questions while they were watching the footage of us diving. So that was really interactive, and we're trying to see where that goes, and maybe we've been chatting to like the children's hospital and stuff, so we could live feed into the children's hospital so they could see, they may not ever got an opportunity to go and dive Ningaloo, but we could maybe take them there. So that's something that we're sort of working on.
Questions live while you're doing it.
Kids could say, "Can you go and look under that rock?" And the diver can go and do that. That's pretty wild, has the ability to take them on the adventure as well, which is cool.
I don't think I've sort of seen that sort of thing.
No.
That's a really cool idea.
Live streaming and interacting at the same time.
It's challenging to do in diving. So we're trying to we had a proof of concept and it worked really well.
Yeah.
So we'll have another crack at that, which will be really cool too. So lots of tech stuff we're getting into to see how we can bring more people into that underwater world.
Yeah.
Because the more people see it, the more they appreciate it.
Especially accessing people that are quite landlocked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Bad rain is really coming in. But before we wrap up, I know you've got to throw your questions at Ryan here.
Oh, yeah. All right, just a couple of off-topic questions we always like to ask.
Well, you like to ask.
Well, all right, throw me under the bus, whatever. If you could have a mechanical pet, like a drone that followed you around everywhere, would you prefer it be like a dog or a bird?
It's not an easy one.
Nah, I know. Well, first thing I thought was I could send the bird off to get me shit, which would be good. Like he could send it and then it would come back. But then, the mechanical dog's got its advantages as well, because I feel like it'd be, even though they're both robots, probably be more loyal.
Yeah.
So I do like that component. The bird would just be like this smart ass thing that
that's it.
So you're going with the dog?
I think I'll go with the dog. I've just got that
solid.
connection.
Breno just straight away asked if he could have a flying dog. Of course, we were trying to hedge his bets. Of course he would.
So, what size are we talking?
Yeah, he starts trying to break it down. I'm like, don't overcook it, Breno. Just answer the question.
Does it have lasers in its eyes?
Well, I mean, these might be like aftermarket optional extras, and where do you keep your tomato sauce? In the fridge or the pantry?
It's in the pantry, mate, where all the other sauces
the pantry.
are.
Oh, no.
Controversial.
Yeah. Right, we're divided there, man.
Nah.
It's a fridge. It even says on it, keep it refrigerated.
I've got baskets of sauces in the in the pantry, and they're all good.
I heard him say fridge.
I nearly said
All
fridge.
good. Anyway, Ryan, thanks
Ryan.
heaps for
No
coming on,
worries.
mate. It's been a pleasure.
Go check out Terra Australis. ShipWreck
and
Hunters Australia.
on the Disney Channel.
Ryan's personal Instagram. He might send you nudes. I don't know if
Maybe
he's into that.
OnlyFans?
Yeah, that's next year, season 3.
Right, thanks, Ryan.
Stuff. We'll
Thank you
get out of
very much, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you, mate.